Now, from WYDC TV, this is Big Fox News at 10.
Thanks for joining us for Big Fox News tonight. I'm Scott Beadle. Another major winter storm hitting the U.S. with millions of Americans in its path. Let's go right to meteorologist Monica McNeil, who's tracking the storm for us. Monica.
Well, this is a very significant storm because it's a little bit of everything: freezing rain, sleet, and snow. And future radar will help us to pinpoint when most of this activity will be moving in. And so far, at about 9 p.m., we're good. Our temperatures are still above freezing, so it is going to take a while before some of this activity begins to transition over. As our temperature drops through the night, you'll definitely notice the snow comes in the morning. So we'll begin to see that transition happening closer to early morning. Definitely that band of freezing rain and sleet mixed in with some of that snow at about 8 o'clock in the morning. Again, we are under a winter storm warning, and that's going to last right on through Friday. Okay, I'll have more details about this forecast for you coming up.
With the southern tier now in a winter storm warning, Catholic Charities in Elmira is working to get homeless residents out of the elements. The organization is securing motel rooms to address the potential influx of residents in need of shelter. Katie Rhodes of Catholic Charities says it's crucial to get people safe and secure housing during the coldest months of winter.
It's really important to have a place where people can be warm and safe out of the elements. It's really important for us to try to get people into some permanent housing as quickly as possible.
Catholic Charities averaged nearly 132 people at its homeless shelters in January. The state of our bridges in the Twin Tiers is under the microscope as money from the infrastructure bill starts to flow in. It comes a week after a massive bridge collapse in Pittsburgh. Big Fox's Matt Kleindinst is in Corning with the story tonight.
Good evening, Scott. Bridge integrity is on the minds of many after last week's bridge collapse in Pittsburgh. One county official told me that maintaining Steuben County's bridges will require some infrastructure funding.
It's expensive to build a bridge at the end of the day. Building it's one issue, and then maintaining it's another issue.
The state of southern tier infrastructure is under scrutiny following the collapse of the Fern Hollow Bridge. A December blog post from Senator Chuck Schumer stated that the southern tier has 240 deficient bridges, with a few of them located in Steuben County.
The county currently has about a percentage of 13% deficiency rate. Roughly 43 bridges.
Eric Rose with Public Works says the county has made large investments to maintain over 300 local bridges. However, the infrastructure funding will be crucial for future bridge maintenance.
The funding is very critical to answer that question. It's very important as it costs quite expensive to endure the cost of a bridge.
Residents I spoke with off camera tell me they feel safe driving across the county's bridges, but accidents like the one in Pittsburgh cause underlying concerns. Rose says the county is on the same page to invest in maintaining the area's infrastructure.
County administration here and some of the support and the previous administration in Public Works have set out a nice plan in working with Cornell Cooperative for these things to maintain this, the integrity that we have.
Matt Kleindinst, Big Fox, WYDC in Corning.
The funeral for a second New York police officer killed last month was held today. The life of Officer Wilbert Mora was celebrated at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Midtown Manhattan. New York City Mayor Eric Adams spoke and said they will never forget the names of Officer Rivera and Officer Mora or their acts of heroism. Officer Mora was fatally shot, along with his partner, Officer Jason Rivera, while responding to a domestic violence call in Harlem last month. A funeral for Officer Rivera was held last week. There's more evidence the Omicron surge is fading, with daily case numbers plunging in former COVID hotspots. Jonathan Seri has more.
There's mounting evidence that the Omicron surge is fading. We're now averaging less than 500,000 cases per day in the U.S., the lowest number since early January. Pediatric cases have dropped for the first time since Thanksgiving. And in New York City, the former epicenter of the outbreak, cases are down 90%, with COVID-weary residents ready to get back to normal life.
I think you take the proper precautions and then after that, you can't be too worried about it.
And new data shows vaccines could be responsible for flattening the curve. The CDC reporting that although COVID vaccines were less effective against Omicron, those who were vaccinated during the surge were significantly less likely to become infected or require hospitalization.
You are 16 times more likely to be hospitalized if you're unvaccinated and 68 times more likely to die than someone who is boosted if you're unvaccinated. That's pretty significant.
Now there's a new push to expand access to the last remaining age group. Pfizer asking the FDA for permission to give 2 doses of its vaccine to kids ages 6 months through 4 years. But the drug maker is also testing a plan to expand to 3 shots of the child-sized doses, saying the 2-dose regimen was strong enough for babies, but not preschoolers.
The thought is that a 3rd dose would give the vaccine enough immune protection that then it would lead to effectiveness, meaning prevention of disease in this age group.
Pfizer says it's expecting final data from the 3-dose study in late March or early April. In Atlanta, Jonathan Seri, Fox News.
The U.S. is sending thousands of troops to Eastern Europe as tensions with Russia escalate. Russia denies it's planning to invade Ukraine despite massing thousands of troops on the Ukrainian border. Madeline Rivera is in Washington with the latest on the standoff.
We are moving an additional force of about approximately 2,000 troops from the United States to Europe in the next few days.
It's the first major movement of U.S. military troops as the showdown over Russia and Ukraine ramps up. The deployment of American forces to Eastern Europe meant to bolster NATO allies and deter Russia from invading Ukraine, where more than 100,000 Russian troops are gathered.
The United States stands shoulder to shoulder with our NATO allies. The current situation demands that we reinforce the deterrent and defensive posture on NATO's eastern flank.
Although the military buildup continues, it's a war of words for now. Russia and the U.S. are trading barbs on who started this crisis, with Russia blaming the U.S. for fanning tensions and ignoring its security concerns.
We do not see a genuine acknowledgement of our 3 key demands: preventing NATO's expansion, canceling weapons deployment near Russian borders, and returning the NATO bloc's military facilities to their positions in 1997.
The White House isn't buying those concerns.
We know who the fox is in this case. We have seen the buildup of troops at the border.
Still, both sides insist they want diplomacy, even though there's doubt on how to achieve it.
It's up to our American friends whether to open these eyes or to remain comfortably numb.
The Pentagon has ordered more troops to be on standby on top of the 8,500 already on heightened alert. But the U.S. maintains no troops will be sent to fight in Ukraine. In Washington, Madeline Rivera, Fox News.
Still ahead tonight, the ongoing pandemic is also causing a medical waste crisis.
In terms of volume of waste, we actually found that gloves were a bigger volume than masks, which is rather interesting given that gloves are, for the most part, a non-essential PPE for COVID.
More on what the World Health Organization is saying about PPE and vaccine waste contaminating the environment.
Here's your local stock market update from Big Fox. Now, your Twin Tiers forecast from Big Fox.
Well, welcome back. This weather forecast is being brought to you by William Mattar. Winter storm warning remains in effect, and we've got a mixed bag of precipitation, freezing rain, sleet, and some heavy snow is to be expected. Taking a look at future radar at about 11 p.m., we do see some areas of snow in place, but I believe the bulk of the freezing rain and the mixing in sleet and snow is going to happen closer to the morning. There we go. That's the actual transition that we're looking for. You see that rain snow line warmer here colder air here. That's that shallow area of cold air that is just over our area, and therefore we'll begin to see that transition at about 7 o'clock in the morning. And that snow is going to last right on through the early part of the afternoon, and that's the reason why we've got a winter storm warning in effect. Thursday and Friday, we're looking at a snow and sleet event. We could pick up between 6 and 12 inches total, folks. Light ice could experience a little glaze out there, and any ice can be extremely dangerous. On bridges, windshields, power lines, anything, the ice can be dangerous. So again, a winter storm warning is in effect. Here's a look at your forecast map. This is a very massive system. From the northeast, it extends down through the Ohio Valley, back down into the Mid-South, all the way into portions of northeast Texas. So it has a wide reach and very cold air behind this system. Many locations will be experiencing some very cold temperatures. Our temperatures will be in the mid-30s for tonight. We'll see a low of about 34 tonight, whereas we normally should be at 24. We're still out ahead of the front. Once the front passes through, our temperatures will really start to tumble. Here's what you can expect for your Thursday forecast. Morning rain, then an icy mix. Right around 35. We'll see winds out of the north and west at 10 to 20, with some occasional gusts up to about 25 miles per hour. Let's take a look at your weather headline, kind of sum things up. So we're talking about Thursday and Friday. Freezing rain is definitely in the forecast. Snow mixing in with sleet, 6 to 12 inches of that mix. And then our temperatures will begin to drop as those systems continue to move on through. So here's what your 7-day weather planner will look like. 35 for your high on Thursday, down to 16. There's that cold air.
The ongoing pandemic is causing a medical waste crisis as people around the world throw away tons of masks, gloves, needles, and more. Kevin Cork has more on how PPE and vaccine rubbish are harming the environment and what we can do about it.
Health officials and scientific data say face masks and vaccines help save lives and ward off serious coronavirus complications. But a new report from the World Health Organization finds some of the things keeping us safe are also generating tens of thousands of tons of medical waste around the globe.
COVID-19 has increased healthcare waste loads in facilities to up to 10 times current volumes.
Besides piling up in landfills, discarded masks, needles, vaccine vials, gloves, and COVID tests are making their way into the environment, contributing to pollution and posing safety concerns for plants, animals, and people who may come into contact with them. But not all waste is created equal.
In terms of volume of waste, we actually found that gloves were a bigger volume than masks, which is rather interesting given that gloves are, for the most part, a non-essential PPE for COVID.
And while the sheer amount of pandemic-related garbage is concerning, officials say the crisis is amplified in poorer nations.
If you consider that 2 in 3 healthcare facilities in the least developed countries didn't have systems to segregate or safely treat waste before the pandemic, you can just imagine how much burden this extra waste load has put on healthcare workers, on surrounding communities.
The WHO says solutions to combating medical waste include not using gloves when administering vaccines, making PPE packaging more sustainable, and creating more reusable masks.
The Department of Transportation has a plan to help fix some of the supply chain issues. It involves getting more truckers on the road, but to make it work, they had to make one big change. Austin Westfall is in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina with the story.
In many states, people 18 years and older can already drive trucks within state lines, but if they want to drive trucks over state lines, then they need to be at least 21 years old. A new program is aiming to change that.
We see 6,000 truck missions, or about 3,500 trucks a day.
Those who run this 300-acre terminal in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, call it a maritime ballet of loading and unloading trucks and ships.
A lot of ports have been affected, including ours. It's hit different ports at different times.
The COO of South Carolina Ports, Barbara Melvin, says the ballet is only possible when the terminal is flowing well, which can be tough during a national trucker shortage. Omar Asby works with local trucker schools.
The apprenticeship program is not the sole answer to it, but it'll help it out.
A pilot program proposed by the U.S. Department of Transportation will lower the age limit for interstate truckers from 21 to 18, but only after younger drivers have completed probationary hours with a mentor. The Georgia Port Authority agrees this is a good idea.
I am fully confident there's an untapped workforce out there that we should be using.
As of late last year, the American Trucking Association said the country was short 80,000 drivers, which is an all-time high for the industry. Some, like the Trucker Safety Coalition, have shared concerns that interstate travel is a big responsibility for 18-year-olds.
Don't forget about the fact that they have to go through all these hours of training before they even set free.
South Carolina Ports says this extra training will help weed out people who aren't up to the task. The new program is already running, but Asby says they aren't expecting to see a significant improvement in the trucker shortage immediately, because it will take a while to train the new, young workforce.
You won't really see a lot of 18-year-olds driving because by the time they get done with our program, they'll be 20, 21.
Since it can take years to train, SC Port says it wouldn't mind if they started seeing people as young as 16 years old start to become interested in learning how to truck. That way they can train up for a couple of years, and then they can hit the ground running as soon as they turn 18.
A project from the Obama White House to eradicate cancer is coming back in focus. President Biden is resurrecting the so-called Cancer Moonshot Project, which aims to reduce the impact of and eventually end cancer as we know it. The goals of the program are to reduce cancer deaths by half over the next 25 years and improve the experience of people and families living with and surviving the disease. The president also announced plans to jumpstart screenings, which had often been missed as a result of the pandemic. We're just days away from the opening ceremonies of the Winter Olympics, but COVID rates are already on the rise. Figures released by local organizers show 11 positive tests among more than 350 athletes and officials arriving in China on Monday. The infection rate among athletes was actually higher than the rates among workers and media in the city. Over a 3-day period from Saturday through Monday, the positive test rate among athletes was 40% higher than all other Olympic arrivals. Athletes who do test positive are taken to isolation hotels and risk missing their events. School closures during the COVID-19 pandemic have had an immense impact on children, and it could even impact their future earnings. Lydia Hu has more.
Missed learning opportunities during the pandemic will cost kids $17 trillion globally in lost earnings over their lifetime. That's according to a recent report from the United Nations and the World Bank. That equals about 14% of today's global GDP. Here's a former member of the Baltimore City Board of Education who's also an economist.
It means that the world is less prepared for its future. There's going to be more poverty. There are going to be more people out of work. And therefore potentially more social instability.
The new estimate of $17 trillion far exceeds the $10 trillion estimate from a year ago, a sign that learning losses are snowballing as closures continue nearly 2 years after the start of the pandemic. In the U.S., more than 7,400 schools were closed to in-person learning 1 or more days during the week of January 10th. And just last week, 2,100 schools were closed 1 or more days. If we look to Flint, Michigan, we see their schools are closing there indefinitely to in-person learning, impacting nearly 4,000 students. And in Cumberland County, New Jersey, middle school and high school students will attend for only a half day for the entire month of February to accommodate teacher shortages. The good news is experts say the accumulating educational losses can be reversed, but a priority must be set on reopening schools full time for in-person learning and offering supplemental learning opportunities through after-school and summer school programming.
Despite rising inflation, Americans are shelling out big bucks for love. Consumers are expected to spend around $24 billion for Valentine's Day this year. That's an increase from the $21.8 billion spent last year, according to the National Retail Federation. 53% of consumers plan to celebrate the holiday, with individual shoppers projected to spend an average of $175 on gifts. The most popular gifts, those are experiences, like tickets to a concert or sporting event. Punxsutawney Phil made his prediction, and he says we're going to have 6 more weeks of winter. The groundhog popped his head out of his western Pennsylvania burrow Wednesday morning, only to see his shadow, which, according to the tradition, means 6 more weeks of winter. The annual ceremony in Gobbler's Knob returned to an in-person event after it went virtual in 2021 due to the pandemic. The tradition dates back to the late 1800s, according to the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club, when people would take their candles to church to have them blessed for the remainder of the winter. Thanks for joining us. Bundle up and have a good night.